While Felix was out on his daily walk, he spotted something peculiar in the grass. Oh, would you look at that? It's a wild switch 2 Pro controller. Quite the rare find. These are normally found in trees. Well, best get the most out of it by making a little video review.
Moving from the Switch 1 Pro controller to the Switch 2 Pro controller, Nintendo is largely taking the if it ain't broke, don't fix it route. Keeping the same basic layout intact, it instead applies several small but significant improvements to make this latest iteration the very best Nintendo controller, in our opinion at least. So, looking at the design of the new pad, it all looks pretty familiar, doesn't it? But there are a few changes that should be noted. For starters, the grips are ever so slightly slimmer than the previous model, which in our case made it much more comfortable in the hand. The index fingers rest perfectly on the ZL and ZR triggers, while the rest of the fingers fall naturally on the grips below. As for the general feel, the matte black/grey finish is wonderful, though it does invite plenty of dust. Meanwhile, the face buttons have been slightly enlarged. Not so much that it's immediately noticeable by sight, but you can really feel the difference in the hand. They're close enough together that your thumb essentially rests on two buttons at once diagonally, making it easy to rock back and forth to hit whichever one you want. Perhaps the biggest improvement comes with those analog sticks though. Good lord, they feel incredible. The standard Joy-Con controllers have been improved in a similar way, with the sticks feeling much smoother than on the Switch 1, but with the Pro controller, this is far more pronounced thanks to the extra travel afforded by the larger sticks. It's so difficult to describe exactly how smooth the motion feels. It's one of those things where if you know, you know. But that said, if you want a bit of a fun attempt at a rundown, then check out this video by Alex in which he demonstrates with a bottle and an oily spoon. There's a link to it down in the description below. But rest assured, the slight grinding that you'd feel on the original Pro controller is now completely gone. Moving on to the D-pad, sensitivity issues some people had with the Switch 1 Pro controller appears to have been fixed here. Testing the D-pad with the calibration settings reveals that rocking it up and down while holding down left or right does still yield up and down inputs, but it's not nearly as sensitive as on the previous controller. In fact, you want it to happen a bit so you can easily pull off diagonal inputs. Playing Street Fighter 6, we were easily able to knock out a few combos and Hadoukens without any fuss, and the retro games via Nintendo Switch Online felt similarly natural with the D-pad. Over on the back, you've also got the new GL and GR buttons, which can be remapped to whatever you wish on a game-by-game basis. You can map the capture button to the back, which is a bit of a game changer for more fast-paced games in which you want to take a few snaps, or you can also map them so it's a bit easier to sprint and jump at the same time in Breath of the Wild, for example. The positioning of the back buttons feel pretty natural too. We mentioned that our fingers rested comfortably on the grips, and this is exactly where the GL and GR buttons are placed. But if you're worried about accidentally pressing them, fear not. You can comfortably move up your fingers slightly for them to rest on the back of the pad, pretty much right where the Nintendo logo is located. But even this isn't entirely necessary in our opinion. The fingers curve around the buttons enough that it doesn't feel like you're ever going to be pressing them unless you consciously want to. The dinky buttons, your home button, capture button, plus minus and game chat button are all tucked away neatly in the middle of the device, with the plus and minus button raised to be actual buttons you press down instead of the old flat clicky ones on the Switch 1 Pro controller. The capture button specifically could be in a slightly easier to reach location, but it's at least out of the way enough that you're probably never going to hit it accidentally, and besides you can map it to one of the back buttons. With the C button, it's the same deal, you know where it is, so it's easily reachable whenever you want to access the Switch 2's game chat menu. What's odd is that thanks to the right analog stick next to it, the game chat button looks slightly off-center. Look, it's not. You can tell by looking at the position in relation to the home and capture buttons above, but next to the analog stick, it just looks a little weird. Elsewhere, the other big change for the Pro Controller 2 is the addition of a 3.5mm headphone jack. Yes, this is a lovely little addition that makes discrete audio an absolute breeze if you happen to be gaming late at night. Something to keep in mind is that you'll need to make sure your controller is fully updated before hooking up a headset, but thankfully, the Switch itself lets you know when you're due if you plug anything into the headphone jack. Positioning the audio jack at the bottom is just about the best place for it too. You've got a standard USB-C slot at the top for your charging needs, so you can easily plug in both a headset and a charging cable without much fuss. Speaking of the top though, you'll notice that the entire area housing the shoulder buttons, USB-C slot and the sync button is now white, as are the shafts for the analog sticks. This is a nice little design decision that easily sets the new pad apart from its predecessor, but we can also understand if it doesn't appeal to those looking for a more uniform look. As for the shoulder buttons themselves, they feel nice and clicky without producing too much noise. No analog functionality for the ZL and ZR buttons sadly, but the digital inputs work perfectly well enough. Truth be told, this is probably the one area of the pad that's required the least amount of tinkering from Nintendo, and it all just feels as good as ever. One last thing to touch on is HD Rumble 2, which definitely feels a lot more robust than the original Pro Controller, and quieter too, but still not quite on par with PS5's haptic feedback. It really feels nice though. Moving between menu options on Mario Kart World produces small yet welcome feedback, while power sliding during races feels appropriately gnarly without distracting you from the action on screen. Really, it's hard to find much fault with. Time will be the true test of course, and it certainly isn't cheap. We'll be keeping a close eye on any potential drifting issues or D-pad shenanigans, but after using it as the primary controller for 99% of the time with the Switch 2 thus far, it's proven to be a magical little accessory, a new benchmark in Nintendo controller design. We here at Nintendo Life give the Nintendo Switch 2 Pro Controller a 9 out of 10. And with Ollie's wonderful review now at its end, it's time for my personal thoughts. Yes, I went along and bought the Switch 2 Pro Controller, and if you know me, I was actually quite on the fence on getting this because, well, I had the Switch 1 Pro Controller, and this is quite expensive. But after hearing people talk on and on and on about how these sticks are just the most wonderful thing in the world, well, I had to go and get it, and, well, they are absolutely right about the sticks. The sticks are wonderful. They are so smooth, and often I just find myself like going in circles with the sticks. Another really great thing is the headphone jack, which is something I've been praying for ever since, well, the Switch 1 Pro Controller was around and it just didn't have one. Well, finally, they have that sorted. I do think that the smaller size, at least in my opinion, is actually a little bit of a downgrade. I quite liked just how the Switch 1 Pro Controller felt in my hand. It was like molded to me, and I think I just need to get used to it, but it's just something feels a little bit off. Same with the material used for the Switch 2. I mean, one cool thing that they talk about in Welcome Tour is that it's actually completely grooveless. There's no grooves or anything. It's really, really cool. Switch 1 Pro Controller had a different kind of material that just, in my opinion, was just a little bit more comfortable. Again, these are just really, really tiny nitpicks. One thing that I have to get accustomed to is the lights up here showing you if the controller is on or off. It's not on this side instead of here because there's a headphone jack now, but I often glance down and I don't know if my controller is on and off, and I have to just remind myself that it's now on this side. One really good thing though is the back buttons, which, I mean, they're really not in the way. You are not going to click these on accident, so that's really, really nice. And a little opposite nitpick, I don't know what you call that, is the plus and minus button. I really, really enjoy that they are actual buttons, and yeah, I'm just a really big fan of it. I also find myself using the D-pad quite often, and I've not had any issues with it myself personally. Lastly, I want to touch about the HD Rumble, because that is one of the things I was mostly excited about, and yes, it is better, but yeah, it doesn't come close to the PlayStation 5's DualSense. That controller is just a mastery, and I hope Nintendo will learn a little bit about that. Maybe have some better triggers now that we're at it. But overall, I really, really enjoy this controller. I'm using it quite often now. I am mostly playing in handheld mode, and there I have a really nice grip, which this doesn't get as much use as maybe Ollie said. He used it like 99% of the time. If I used it on my TV, of course, I would be using this more often. But overall, yeah, really nice bit of a controller, and yeah, I definitely do not regret my purchase. If you heard all my nitpicks and be like, oh, he hates this controller, no. I just think I don't love it as much as everyone else, but it's still really, really good and an upgrade from the Switch 1 Pro Controller. But what do you all think? If you've already gone and bought this controller, why don't you let us know down in the comments below for people who are considering it, and they can also go down there and get more second opinions. That never hurts. But without further ado, thank you all so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one. Felix from Nintendo Life, out.